Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm so excited. Once again, we have RJ Spina, one of my very favorite people, and we're going to dedicate this hour to healing. RJ is perhaps the world's greatest expert on metaphysical healing. And there's a lot of people that are listening to this episode that are struggling. They're struggling in their health in a variety of things. And sometimes it can feel hopeless. And sometimes when we talk about healing, it sounds so cliche. And I'm telling you that there is an avenue to heal whatever you're going through. It can be a terminal illness, whatever it is. I want you to just sit back and just let go of that little part of you that wants to accept the world as it is and know that miracles can happen and it comes from you. And RJ is going to allow us to do that. If you don't know RJ, check out my other interviews. They've been really amazing. RJ healed himself from the chest down, from chest down paralysis, and has dedicated his life to bringing his own knowledge of his transcendence that led to his own healing. And that his books that he has written are absolutely amazing. He has another book coming out in August, Access Super Consciousness. I cannot wait to read it. Welcome to the Reality Revolution once again, RJ.
Oh, well, thank you for having my friend. We enjoy our time together, and I've been looking forward to this. Thank you for having me again. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So we have a big event coming up in Dallas on July 26th through the 28th. And that's going to be an event that you're putting on that people can go to that's dedicated to healing. And so I just want everybody to know about this amazing experience that is going to be available for everyone. So let's just start back. And for the people that maybe didn't see my other interviews, let's talk about your own experience in healing yourself and, what exactly happened with that.
Sure, yeah. It was, believe it or not, now it's going on 8 years. So I became air quotes permanently paralyzed from the chest down. I was told I had about 48 hours to live due to severe sepsis. I was diagnosed with multiple diseases: type 1 diabetes, Hashimoto's autoimmune disease, a retracted heart, nodular thyroid, pancreatitis, and I was suffering from something called autonomic dysreflexia. And for those who don't know what that is, consider yourself lucky. Essentially, autonomic dysreflexia affects paraplegics and quadriplegics whose injury is above T6 on the spine, and the majority of my crushed spine was T7 and T8. So essentially, autonomic dysreflexia, you can die from the complications. You can have a stroke, an aneurysm, you can slip into a coma. And I believe Superman, Christopher Reeve, passed away from complications of autonomic dysreflexia. So it was a bevy of a plethora of situation or ailments or diagnoses that you cannot overcome. Absolutely none of them. None of them are you allowed to transcend. There's no real medication for most of those things. The type 1 diabetes, you just treat it. So what happened was I had emergency surgery, Brian, on April 23rd, 2016. And when I awoke from the surgery, I had awakened once again into authentic cosmic consciousness. We like to joke that it became RJ 2.0. So all this remembering and know-how, metaphysical mastery about how healing and self-realization works, literally came back to me. It was literally a muscle memory. And in the ICU, I started explaining to the nurse and then the next day to the doctors that I would heal myself. I was very specific about actually how I would go about doing that, the metaphysical understandings, the teachings, what I was going to do. And I said that in 100 days, I'll be completely healed. I'll walk unassisted and I'll show absolutely no signs of any of these chronic diseases that you can't actually get any better from. And I knew no one would believe this. I knew no one would believe that I'm actually going to unparalyze myself and overcome all these other issues. So I made sure to have the nurses, the physical therapists, even some of the doctors, they would actually film me unparalyzing myself. And as you know, there's a video of this. It's the clips are actually dated, they're time stamped,
Mhm.
and I was completely and utterly beyond the permanent paralysis, and I walked exactly like I said I would in precisely 100 days, exactly like I said I would, and I show no signs of any of the plethora of other uh, ailments and so-called diseases that you can't get better from. And so those understandings, those metaphysical teachings, Brian, are what make up the teachings in the first book of Supercharged Self-Healing about how to literally transcend and overcome any so-called disharmony. And it doesn't matter if it's mental, emotional, physical, or all the above. When we work with ourselves properly and optimally, just like you said at the beginning, there's nothing that we can't transcend. And the workshop that we're going to be doing in Dallas, as you mentioned, I'm going to be walking people through the steps of the healing technique. I'm going to be offering information that they would not let me put in the book. I'm going to be talking about things that will be highly controversial. And I won't say some of them on your channel. I don't want your channel to get shut down. But
Mhm.
in person, I'm able to do these things, and we're going to overcome things that that right now most of the world thinks are absolutely impossible. When the truth of the matter is, it's within all of us, and I'm going to show everybody how to do it.
Biggest problem, there's a structural problem with the healthcare industry in general, and that is that it's that you got the problem. They're working from a place where they have the problem, and then they're just trying to fix the problem. And so it's always at a very limited perspective. And people go to the doctor's going to see the problem, and he's going to try to figure out some way to just stop the effects of what's going on, not the actual cause. And it's always about just reducing and allaying the effect of the problem. There's some good doctors out there that try, but overall the structure is set up so, oh, I have an inflammation. Well, let's just try to get rid of the inflammation, not even trying to figure out what the cause of the inflammation is, right?
You got it. I mean, that's one of the primary issues. It's part of why humanity has lost touch with self-healing, because the approach is backwards. So and let's look at it this way too, Brian. When I say healing, I bet almost everyone thinks of physical healing when I say healing.
Hmm.
Right? Okay. Physicality is the last place the imbalance shows up. So, in other words, we have to treat the etheric body, the mental body, the emotional body, and the astral body, because this is where the disharmony is germinates from and then comes down frequentially and manifests itself within the body. So, what we do in terms of Western medicine, we're treating just where the symptoms have shown up. We're not, just like you said, we're not treating the cause, which is why Western medicine doesn't talk about the C word, which is cure. They just treat symptoms. I'm not interested in just treating
Hmm.
symptoms. When we work with ourselves optimally, what we'll do is we go to the area of our higher mind where form and function is actually created. Now, when you go to where form and function of the vehicle, when you go to where form and function is created, the changes that you make there eventually travel down frequentially and then show up in the physical form. I mean, how else do you unparalyze yourself? So you have to go to the form and function. And I'm going to actually walk people through the process of getting to that state of consciousness and then actually making the alterations there. And then eventually it shows up in the physical body. And the second thing about that is that we believe in the authenticity of a diagnosis. That makes it real. That makes it solid. That makes it impossible to overcome. That's very important to understand. And the other aspect of that is, if we agree and start to take physical things, whether it's pills, tinctures, antibiotics, anything like that, what we're saying is we are agreeing that matter has dominion over spirit, and it does not. It absolutely does not. So we have to do everything in reverse. We have to forget everything that we think we know. We have to let go of all these theoretical assumptions. We have to stop being a consumer of other people's opinions. and start realizing the truth that we are an immortal, limitless creator. And when we have the right process to go to the levels of form and function and to deprogram and delete these things, there is absolutely no limitations in terms of what we can do. And that's exactly what we're going to literally tangibly experience when we do the workshop.
I'd like to sidestep because you brought up something very fascinating and it helped me understand my own healing and others. You mentioned the different bodies that we're aware of our physical body, but let's talk about those other bodies just for a second so we can identify those. There are these subtle bodies that we have, and some people might not understand this concept. There's an astral. So how many bodies do we actually have, and how do they work?
Yeah, so think of the chakras, right? And
Right.
without us getting lost in all this information, but think of each chakra, and there are 7 bodies of energy: celestial body, etheric body, emotional body, mental body, astral body, physical body. So there's all these different levels. So just here's the image that I use.
Mhm.
Okay. You're old enough like me. You remember a slinky. Okay. So let's go back with the top of the steps where we're going to put the slinky at the top of the steps, and then we kind of push it and it goes down the steps. Okay. So the top of the steps, Brian, is the creator consciousness level of where form and function is put together. Okay. So
Mhm.
that is our blueprint of perfect health. Our blueprint of perfect health, where form and function is put together. Now, each time that slinky goes down one step, it's dropping down frequentially, and there is another blueprint that is translated from the original blueprint of perfect health. So each time we come down to the celestial, to the etheric, to the astral, to the mental, as the slinky's coming down the stairs, it's another blueprint. It's another translation of the original form. And this is where we misprogram ourselves through deep rooted misperceptions, misunderstandings, and misidentifications. And then once we have that in any one of those bodies, that blueprint of that's been misprogrammed is now translated one more step down as the slinky comes down. And now we have a blueprint that's off, that's incorrect, that carries with it ill health or disharmony. And
Mhm.
that keeps getting translated till we get to the physical body. And then we have the physical translation of our own misprogramming that we have done to ourselves through the misperceptions, misunderstandings, and misidentifications. Now, the further that we go up in our consciousness and we're able to go up these frequential steps, and the further you go up to form and function is where you can change anything, because that's what informs the celestial, the etheric, the mental, the astral, the physical, everything. So when you go that way, when you work that way, there's nothing that you can't do. If you're just addressing the body, what that's really like is you have a flood in your basement, right? And you keep trying to clean out the basement because it keeps flooding. Yeah, but the leak is on the second floor. So it doesn't
Mhm.
matter how many times you treat the body, right? That's not the source point. So the difference between these teachings is the tangible experience that we're going to be able to have by going to these higher states of consciousness and put the power back in our hands. And there's nothing that when I say nothing, I mean there's nothing that we can't overcome. It doesn't matter what it is, because it's all energy, and it can be directed by the sentience or the I am when we work with ourselves optimally and properly. And that's exactly what we're going to do.
And when I've created videos talking about essentially what you're saying, one of the most common responses that I get is, what about my brother who was born with a brain tumor? What about my son who has an allergy to peanut butter? That he did not create that. That's just something he was born with. It's in his genes. So what do I tell them that, like, no, what do I explain to them? And that people that argue it isn't about the spirit. It's just something that we can't help how we're born. And sometimes these things we're born with them.
Okay. that's a it's a multi-layered or the answer is multi-layered. It's not a
Yeah.
multi-layered question. The answer is multi-layered. Okay. So the first thing that I want everyone to understand is that before we reincarnate, we have a total and complete understanding of the hereditary traits within the genetic entity, the body that we're going to incarnate into. There are absolutely no surprises. Okay, we are not a victim to genetics. We're a the only time we're a victim is when we're a victim of our own perspective, and we just can't see deeply enough. Okay, so we know the body that we're going to incarnate into, and we're well aware if it has genetic traits, hereditary misprograms that may show up, such as what you just mentioned. So we're aware of it. That's number one. Number two, it doesn't matter what's going on in terms of hereditary traits or genetics, because the occupying sentience within the physical vehicle, once it gains dominion over the body mind complex, can completely and utterly rewrite hereditary traits and genetic imperfections. Now, most of us are certain, well, not most of us, none of us are taught how to do this. Well, now we are taught how to do this properly. But once we gain dominion over the body mind complex, it doesn't matter what the genetic lineage is, what the hereditary traits are. The occupying sentience, the soul that's within the body, once it gains dominion, can completely rewrite everything. We change our genetics from moment to moment based upon our
Mm-hmm.
frequency and vibration and the way that we're operating. No one is a slave to genetics. We know the body we're going to incarnate into, and we can completely transcend them when the I am takes over the incarnation.
And that's good to know because my grandfather had Parkinson's, my grandmother had Parkinson's, my dad had Parkinson's.
Mm.
So I have this thought in my head, and I understand the power of belief. The biology of belief, that amazing book just finally gave me the idea that, okay, maybe I can escape from this idea that genetically I'm predisposed to have Parkinson's, right? Uh, is there if you have that, and it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy where you're constantly thinking about it's a family born disease or something like that. Is there and I'm dealing with the tidal wave of past experience and times I've thought about it, sitting with my parents thinking about it. So how can I push back the wave of that and start afresh and start to reprogram my genetics? Is there
Okay.
a way to start doing that?
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. Let me sum up reality creation in one word.
Hmm.
We create reality based upon what we believe to be real and true. And that's it. That's it. Existence itself is a blank canvas. It's only what we believe to be real and true is what solidifies things into a tangible experience while incarnating the lower frequencies of the physical universe. So it's completely and utterly up to us without question. Okay.
But there are universal laws that are set into the program we can't fight against, like the laws of gravity, right? So those laws, are they built into our genetics? Are those attributable to some universal laws that there are things I can't overcome? Or can I, if I'm born with white skin and I want to have black skin, I can't change that. I can put some makeup on, right? But I can't change the programming of my DNA to change the color of my skin. This is who I am, right? So that's a universal law I have to accept, is it not?
It is not. Okay, so no, not from my experience. Okay, let me just give an example
Yeah.
about. So we've all seen those pictures of beings that are in blue, blue skinned and with 8 arms, right? There were certain Hindu gods, right, that
Hmm.
appeared to have completely different. Okay, they're able to, when you work at a supremely high level, you're able to manipulate energy in any way you see fit, in
Hmm.
any way you see fit. And this physical body is just energy. There's nothing solid about it. It seems solid, or it's an experience of solidity because we're viewing it from the same frequential bandwidth in which we have the experience. So when you view it from a higher consciousness perspective, you actually tangibly realize it's still just energy that can be manipulated and controlled.
Hmm.
So at the highest levels, I'm not saying everyone is just going to turn around and turn their skin color blue or whatever,
Right.
right? But can they? Absolutely. Absolutely. So we acquiesce to these so-called eternal immutable laws when we don't really understand because we're looking at it from a human perspective. When you don't look at them, which I realize is a bit challenging, but when we don't look at things, Brian, from a human perspective,
Mhm.
We're going to see these laws differently, and we're going to then experience them difficulty. I mean, there are, what is it, salamanders or lizards that grow body parts back?
Yeah.
Okay, so so there's nothing that we can't do when we operate literally at the highest levels. So that's important. And when you also ask me, how do we start to rewrite our genetics? It's very simple. We do one of the instantaneous meditation magic tricks. That is, pretend you just arrived here, no past, no future.
Hmm.
Now you're starting over. Every now, Brian, there's a new you. Now, the only reason, and I've said this before, and I'm going to really go into this in the workshop, if we're sick in this moment, right? And then the next now happens. The only reason, believe it or not, that we're still sick is because we completely and utterly expect to be sick in the next moment. Because it's literally a new you every single now, 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 now. So we keep taking our past and throwing it in front of us and stepping into it as in our future, because whatever it is that we believe to be real and true is how we create our reality. Through detachment and non-identification, we can actually stop that entire process. Now, none of this is taught. It's until now. And there's a part of the things that I want to do when I do workshops and retreats. We go way past what is accepted in terms of what's possible and what's not possible. But the truth of the matter is, we are a limitless creator being that's born anew every single now. Now, the key is to not just understand that mentally, because that's nowhere near good enough. Most of us understand what's wrong with us. Well, that doesn't help us heal. That doesn't even do anything. So
Hmm.
it's not about mentally understanding these things, Brian. It's about the tangible knowingness and recognition of these deeper truths. And that's what allows transcendence over ill health.
Obviously, if it was simple, you'd have a bunch of people that were healed. Obviously, there's a huge number of blocks and obstacles for people to go to that level of transcendence. You've had some experience in bringing this transcendence to other people. So, what do you find to be the biggest obstacle for people that are trying to heal and they just simply can't?
Two things. Great question, Brian. Two things. The programmed mind, right, which is everything that we've been told, and then accept what we believe to be real and true, is, and then we create that reality. So our programmed subconscious pattern egoic mind is number one, and number two, the identification with the experience. So all suffering, what that means is all suffering comes from identification. Now, once you identify, and the foundation of the ego mind identity is identification with the genetic entity or physical form. Now, once
Hmm.
you identify with that and think that's you, the physical world becomes real and therefore solid. And now we've created resistance. Now
Hmm.
we've created resistance. And now we can't build up enough inertia and momentum to overcome these things that we have created through our resistance, because we believe it to be real and true through the misidentification with physicality. So it's those, I know I said that fast, I apologize. So
No,
it's
no,
the,
that's fine.
okay, it's those two things, Brian. It's the pattern subconscious egoic mind, which really means being a consumer of all the stuff that's put out there. And we just say, yes, studies now
Hmm.
show XYZ. And we go, yes, that's right. And then the deep identification with the physical form. And once you identify with the physical form, like I said, suffering is inevitable. But it's the non-identification with the physical form. When we get that space between the awareness, the I am, and the physical body, once we get a little bit of space, my friend, that's the room to work. That's when we can do magic. That's when we can move energy. That's when we can channel energy into the crown chakra and into the body. So it's those two things, the subconscious pattern, egoic mind, and it's the deep identification with the physical form.
When I'm battling with myself and helping others deal with their own subconscious egoic mind, what I sense, if I were to put it into a visual, it's like an ocean wave. It's like a big, gigantic ocean wave that's coming at you, and it's hard to stop a wave. It's just it's built up over a long period of nows that have just accumulated. The slinky is just moving and moving and moving, right? And so uh, there's this desire in helping to heal others I would have is I could stop the slinky and all its momentum. It's a moving, it's a momentum. It has movement. So sometimes, when you're dealing with somebody struggling with certain sicknesses and cancers, that's like an ocean of just beliefs and constant repetition of things going on over and over. How do you stop that momentum? Because you can enter into the now, but it's easier said than done. There has to be like a wall that we can put up to literally stop that wave and start over. And that's the thing sometimes that we come up against. I'd love to know your tricks in dealing with that.
Yeah, yeah. So true. Okay. So one of the things I like to say is that the painter is not the painting.
Mhm.
Okay. So we are not this actor who's performing actions. We are not this human character. Now, I know we identify with it and we lose ourselves in our creation. The painter is losing himself in the painting, right? But the human character and the actions and the experiences that it has is simply a projection from within our consciousness, outwardly projected by the I am or the fractal of God. Now, this is tangibly known, and it's not difficult to tangibly become aware of this, is because if we just stop and think for a second, aren't we aware of our human character and everything it's ever done? And if we are actually the awareness of every thought, every emotion, every action, every bodily sensation, then how can we actually be the character if we're aware of it? Okay, there's your proof. We are the
Mhm.
awareness of this character and all the stuff it does. The painter is not the painting. Now, once we gain that level of detachment, Brian, that stops the momentum.
Mhm.
That's that's the key. If we keep identifying with every symptom, every ailment, every thought, every emotion, every bodily sensation, well, then that snowball is only going to get bigger and more powerful and just keep rolling. You're absolutely right. All we have to do is realize the truth is that we are the awareness of everything our human character does. And one cannot be the awareness and the victim at the same time.
Yeah.
Period. Right. That stops the momentum, my friend. But until we get to that, not just the mental understanding, the tangible recognition, the tangible felt sense knowingness that we are not our human character, that we are simply the awareness, that we're not the body. We are something else. We are something beyond it. We are something that created it. And the painter's not the painting. That puts the empowerment back where it belongs, to the mighty I am. And the immeasurable I am can do anything, but we have to remove, I should say, the misperceptions, the misunderstandings, and the misidentifications, because the summation of all those things is our human character. But that's not what we are. And once we tangibly taste that and we have the right process, and the ascended frequencies healing technique is the exact process to use. Once we start employing it from that state of consciousness, there's nothing that we can't do. I've helped people, it's too many things to list.
Mhm.
Someone that needed a heart transplant, they're on their deathbed, spontaneous healing. I've helped too many people to count, with cancer, paralysis, heart disease. You, I only listed a few, everything. I've
Yeah.
seen and heard everything. It's just energy. And there's nothing that can't be put back into place when you work with yourself properly.
Can you help heal someone? If you go to someone and they said, RJ, we need your help healing my brother, and he's in a coma. Is it too late? If once he's in the coma, can we enter into a meditative state, contact their higher self and help them to heal? What do you do with someone that's beyond that point? Oh, they've lost their level of awareness and consciousness. Is that a point where it's too late to heal?
Okay. Another great question. I'm not surprised, Brian. Okay. So when someone is in a coma, they have not lost their level of consciousness. There's simply a gulf between them and being able to consciously animate and work the mind body complex. It's almost like it's think of a castle with a moat around it. Right? It just, I go right to that kind of stuff. Anyway, so there's a gap that can't be accessed through the I am, and that's why the mind body complex, that doesn't react to anything, and it seems like they're not there anymore. They are. They just can't access and utilize the mind body complex. Okay, so that's number one. it's important to understand that the only time it's so-called too late, it's when the occupying soul within the vehicle has determined that they want to terminate the incarnation, because all deaths are suicides. They're all planned, and
Right.
we have 7 of them, and each one is correlates to our chakra system. So
Hmm.
every single person, like cat has 9 lives, so we have 7.
Hmm.
So we have 7. So it correlates, and we can avail ourselves of any one of these termination points or exit junctures, but only when the soul, the real self, has determined it's done enough. The ego mind cannot access any of this. The ego mind will rail against this because it's just filled with limitations and a lack of perspective. So
Hmm.
it's only too late, Brian, when the soul itself has made the decision that it's going to terminate the incarnation by availing itself of the next time it can leave. And when it does that in communion with its guides and helpers, what we call our guardian angels, because they're still holding the life plan. We come down here clueless, right? But they still got the movie script that we wrote, our life plan. And
Hmm.
when we determine with them that it's time for that I've done enough, I've experienced enough, I've learned enough, and it's time for the incarnation to end, if they're the ones that turn off the body. Our guides and helpers are the ones that turn it off because they're in agreement with us. So that is the only time that it's actually too late. Other than that, it's never too late.
Is there anything that you can do at that point, or it's entirely up to that person within their consciousness? Can we, in our own meditation, try to communicate with their guides and say, "Hey, come back"? Can turn everything back on? Is there is have you had any experiences or worked with that?
Yeah. So my experience is that we let them know that there's still a choice.
Hmm.
So it's not for me or for anyone to impose on someone's free will, right?
Right.
So if a soul has decided, I've done enough, I've experienced what, et cetera, just what we just went over. You can connect with that soul and its guides and helpers and say, whatever you want to do is fine, but you do have a choice. You don't necessarily have to avail yourself of this termination point or exit juncture. Now, if you want to, I can assist with that by sending healing energy, by the way, to someone who has decided that they want to terminate the incarnation. They will use that energy to actually lift themselves and um, not dismantle, but be able to remove themselves from the stickiness that we sometimes experience by pulling our energy from the body itself. So when
Right.
you do healing work on someone who has decided that they want to leave, they will utilize that energy for them to leave. So all we want to do is really let them know that there's still a choice, and that whatever choice they make, whether it's to leave the incarnation or to continue on, you support them in that choice.
I'd like to talk about emotions that we don't release in our body, which is oftentimes a very noticeable cause. People are angry, but they never express it. They just hold it in their body. People have frustrated or resentments, and it's if you could look at somebody's energy in their body, you can see it just sitting there, just like
Mm.
just building and building. And a lot of times, I'm sure that what you're dealing with is helping people release these bundles of energy that come from emotions. So talk a little bit about that and how we can deal and address that within ourselves and others.
Yeah, another great question. I'm repeating myself. Okay, so I'll tell a quick story about someone that I worked on very, very, very early on when I had just got out of the hospital rehab, and at this point I think I was still using a walker. It hadn't been quite 100 days, but the Chinese medicine expert who was treating me, who was my only visitor and who wrote the foreword for the first book,
Mhm.
he would have me come to his clinic in San Diego. He's got this great big clinic and tons of clients, and I didn't know he was telling them, all his clients or his patients, about me, about this is incredible, this healing, what he understands, blah blah blah. So he had asked me when I get out if I wanted to teach meditation to all of his patients, and of course I would love to teach meditation. So in the very very beginning, I would show up at his clinic, and there'd be 40, 50 people waiting there for me to teach meditation and then talk about some of the things that that we're talking about now. But I can remember this one lady After the meditation, she came up to me and she said, I've been suffering from choking. I can't swallow pills. I'm afraid to go out to eat. Anytime I eat something, I feel like I'm going to choke. I can't breathe. And I've seen every doctor. I've done every treatment, every modality. I've tried everything, and I can't get past this. And it's been 10 years. And so I looked at her, not with my physical eyes, but I looked at her and I said, "Oh, you just got some fear trapped here right in the center. I'll just move that right away. I can just do it right now." And so that fear, right, the emotions, the fear trapped, right, what it does is it inhibits the functionality of the human vehicle because fear can only exist in the absence of the divine. Now, our physical body was designed perfectly to take direction from the I am or the causal body. It was never, ever designed to take direction from the egoic mind. Now, after we do this for years and years and years, right, we develop a disharmony within our body. These fears, these emotions, rage, lust. I mean, just, pick one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it inhibits the functionality, and it just sits there. And just like you said, but once it's seen and removed, and a profound healer can do that, or someone can do that for themselves when they know how to do it, and then everything starts to return to its normal form and function. So when we are harboring any kind of emotion through identification, again, through identification, identifying with fear because of an experience that we had, and then we maintain that fear because we identify with the experience, or anger, right? Or anything, pick anything. The body can't work optimally that way. And those energetic pathways get shut down because there's something there that doesn't belong there and it prevents it. Fear and anger, and this things just fester and fester. And this is some of where we get what we, so-called cancer, but I'm really going to talk about that during the workshop. Not going to talk about it on your channel because you'll get shut down. So you can actually see these things and you can move these things when you understand that you're not that you're the awareness of it. Once you realize that you're the awareness of it, including the experience that traumatized you, it will actually start to lift up and leave because it wants to, because it doesn't belong to you. It's not supposed to be there. It's not meant to be there. So it's the tangible recognition of who and what you really are, and realizing the painter is not the painting. And once someone is ready, and only when they're ready, can someone who's skilled at healing actually, quote unquote, heal them. And no one heals anybody, by the way. That's a load of garbage.
Mm-hmm.
When a person is done, if they realize that whatever it is that they're experiencing, the disharmony that they're experiencing no longer serves them any longer, and they're ready to move past it, and then they go see a healer or work on themselves properly, like the books and the courses lay out, that's when they will be healed. But they're the ones doing the healing. A
Mm-hmm.
profound healer will have such powerful high frequency energy. The recipient or the patient or the client will have to match that frequency. And in matching that frequency, it clears out all the disharmony and they reclaim themselves. Eventually, the patient has to reclaim themselves. And that's why all healing is self-healing. But these things that sit around in our body, they don't belong there. But once we recognize that we're the awareness of it, whether it's pain or anger, and once we realize that we're the awareness of the event that traumatized us, it'll come up. You let it come up, and then let it leave because it doesn't belong to you.
So I'd like to talk about healing mental imbalances. We've talked a lot about physical and emotional, but you got the person that's schizophrenic. You got people that are in mental institutions. Split personality syndromes. These are sicknesses of consciousness, and difficult because their self-healing is also an aspect of that consciousness. So how do you as a healer address somebody that's dealing with a mental sickness?
Well, most illness, all disharmony comes from disharmonious thought patterns.
Mhm.
All of it. All thoughts are in context to some identification. Identification to a belief, to a concept, to an ideology, to so-called knowledge, or to some experience. Now, once we start to recognize that we are creating these things through our identifications and attachments. We can begin to let these things go. But only the truth heals, Brian.
Mhm.
Only the truth heals. So we must come to the truth of who and what we really are, the I am, the immeasurable, perfect, divine fractal of God. That's what we are. And last I checked, God is not suffering from any illness, right? Okay.
Mhm.
So once we recognize the truth, we can actually overcome anything. Schizophrenia is a hanger-on disincarnate entity. That's what there's. If people don't know that, that's what that
All
is.
right.
Is a hanger-on disincarnate. That's where they have that totally different personality and it just takes over, right?
Mhm.
Bipolarism is multiple souls trying to operate the same vehicle. That's what bipolarism is, and then there's no medication that's ever going to do anything for these two instances. We have to reclaim our sovereignty, and we have to demand that we are the sole occupant of the physical vehicle. And then once we do that, we can move past things like schizophrenia. We can move past things like bipolarism. Now, Western medicine is never going to address this
Mhm.
ever because it's not in the business of healing. It's not in the business of understanding the truth. It's in the business of treating symptoms. And the more that you treat symptoms with drugs, the more that you're pushing it down deeper and deeper within the tissues. So when you take things, you actually have to heal twice. You have to heal from what it is that you just took, and you have to heal from the original disharmony.
Yeah.
So it's only going to be, Brian, we are only going to solve the problems of the lower consciousness from a different perspective. And that different perspective will be the higher consciousness perspective. That's what will solve the problems of low frequency disharmony. And it doesn't matter if it's mental, emotional, physical, purely energetic, or all of the above. When we take command, there's nothing that we can't do. Nothing.
I'd love to talk to you about a technique that Joseph Murphy taught about healing that I found some success with. It seemed pretty simple. You know, he was using Jesus' teachings, but you come upon somebody that's sick, uh, and you just you just start to identify the divine within them, the
Mm,
God within them. You know, it's just like you awaken it. It's like a little spark. It's like you don't need to talk to them. You don't need to say anything. It's just there's an interaction where you are a catalyst for awakening and recognizing that divinity within them. Does that make sense as a
absolutely.
healing technique? Yeah.
I absolutely love it. That you could almost say that that's a core principle for any kind of
Hmm.
healing to take place. Now, but remember though, the truth is still the truth. The patient um, has to recognize this themselves.
Right.
Because all healing is self-healing. If anyone says there's some great healer and they can heal anybody, they're full of it. They don't really know what's going on. Now, can certain advanced souls really command a lot of energy? Yeah, absolutely. I'm one of them without question.
Hmm.
But until that person is ready to heal themselves, it doesn't matter what I do. That's irrelevant. I can't do it for anybody. But that's absolutely right about recognizing the sovereignty, the divinity within, that perfection, that wholeness, that completeness, and then no longer holding on to the misperceptions, misunderstandings, and misidentifications of personhood. We're not a person. We have no name, no image, no form. We are a divine fractal of God wearing a suit that looks like this. And once we start to recognize that, that's when all these so-called illnesses will start to fall away. It's by recognizing the truth. And that's a wonderful, I've never heard that before. That's an
Hmm.
absolute, I would say that's at the core of any real healing is just what you said.
Another thing that I've found some success and learned from Neville Goddard, I'd like to ask your opinion on, is revising past memories. A lot of times our sickness is based on a past memory. For instance, a woman that Neville Goddard tells a story about, she gets into a car accident, some glass gets into her eye. They fix it, but she's got terrible vision in that eye. And doctor says, there's nothing we can do. Your eye's permanently damaged. And so Neville teaches revision to her and just says, go back and remember that event differently. You drive up to the car, you drive around it, and there's no accident. So she goes into the process of imagining this accident and just driving around, and there's no accident. And then her eye starts to heal, and the doctor's shocked, like, "What happened? How could you do this?" So it goes to what you were saying is that we're dealing with the subconscious, but that seems to be a lot of times it's a memory that's causing the sickness. We remember when we had the injury, right? But we're really only in this moment, as you had taught, that like today's right now is the first moment of this life, right? So revision becomes this a powerful way. We don't have to accept that past injury ever happened. We can just say and remember it differently. I didn't break my leg. I didn't, whatever it is, right? What's your opinion on that?
Absolutely. That's another way that we can do it. Again, if we go back to pretend you just arrived here, no past, no future.
Mhm.
There is no past, there is no future. How are you sick?
Right.
Really let that land. We're only sick, as I explained before, because we're identifying with the past and then throwing that in front of us and then stepping into that as the future. That's the only reason why we're ill in this moment and then we're ill in the next moment, because we are born new every single now. That is the absolute deepest truth, and we need to understand.
Mhm.
So if we're carrying illness around, it's because we are carrying it around and we're identifying with it. Remember, I said all suffering comes from identification. So the illness comes from identification with a disharmonious experience that can no longer work. The body can no, or mind can no longer work with in a healthy way. The key is to understand, just start over. But it's not good enough to understand that mentally. You have to feel it. It has to be tangible. Mentally understanding anything, Brian, is worthless because we're not our thoughts. So we have moved into the age of experiential wisdom. It must be felt sense, experiential knowingness. There must be the tangible mental understandings. Mental understandings are worthless because we're not our thoughts. So we are the I am. And once we tangibly recognize that truth, that will transcend all disharmony.
I'd like to get your idea of how to use affirmations. There's been some great healers like Lewis Hay who really focused on that as a healing aspect, and there's many people listening that have at least used some of Joseph Murphy's and some others, where they start to really address the imbalance, and using words seems to be powerful. I'd like to get your perspective on how to use affirmations as a form of healing.
Yeah, they can be very effective. And well, I use commands more than affirmations.
Hmm.
So command is the most powerful directive that we can create our reality from. And prayer, as taught in Western society, is the least effective, because prayer, in the way that it's taught, has to do with you're praying to something outside of you, and there's a hierarchy to it, which also is very disempowering. And it's also not true, because it's all one thing and God is within our consciousness. But when we say a command that is directed from the I am, when we're speaking our truth, that has the greatest effect upon all the energies. And the first energy that's affected is the energy of our subtle body and our physical body. So as we're emanating that specific vibration based upon the mantra or the command, we got the definition of words from the effect that vibration would have upon the energies in the ethers, and the different shapes and forms that would take place is actually how we got the definition of words. So the words that we say have a profound and powerful effect, and when they're used properly, people have healed themselves using affirmations, using mantras. I prefer commands because commands are more powerful, and when they come directly from the I am, there's nothing more powerful. But the key to all of these, Brian, is to feel into the resonance, the vibrational quality of each word that we're saying. And that's what gives mantras power, by feeling the words themselves. When we're saying these mantras, these affirmations, or these commands, and we actually feel the words themselves, that's what changes the energies. Because if we just said things and we didn't connect to it, right? Almost like reading off your shopping list: milk, eggs, this, that, right? Nothing's going to happen.
Hmm.
Absolutely nothing's going to happen. We have to connect with the meaning of the words, which is the frequency, the emanation. And when we connect with the frequency, the emanation, that's what actually changes the subconscious programming, our subtle body of energy, and our physical body.
Now, how do you address pain? Sometimes pain can be so debilitating, you're incapable of meditating. You're incapable of stopping and saying, I am aware and I'm separate from my awareness, and going through the techniques that you're talking about. A lot of times it's so crippling that you'll take anything, you'll do anything, give me that drug, whatever. How do we address pain? Somebody that's in pain, I'm sure that there's somebody watching this video right now that is in pain. They're like, I can't do any of that. It hurts too bad. I just want to go to sleep. So how do we address that?
Okay. I'm glad you asked that because, fortunately or unfortunately, I know what it's like to experience levels of pain that I didn't even think existed. Literally, the kind
Mhm.
of pain where you lose your mind, the kind of pain that you just start screaming, spinal pain and a crushed spine, and then bringing all those nerve endings back to life and rejuvenating the spine was beyond horrific. And I had to learn how to do everything that I'm talking about in literally excruciating, agonizing pain. So I
Mhm.
know, like I said, fortunately or unfortunately, I know a lot about it. Okay. There's a meditation on my Supercharged Self Healing online course. There's a meditation specifically for pain that works like magic, like real magic. So I have a meditation just for that. But here are the pointers that we can start to use. Number one, you have to realize that you're just the awareness of the sensation. You're not the sensation itself. Painter is not the painting. So, in other words, this immeasurable I am, which can never be harmed, goes through every incarnation completely unscathed and untouched, just like the sun, no matter how bad the weather is. We are the sun. We are the awareness of bodily sensations, and that's all. And awareness can never be harmed, ever. So once we start to feel that, not just understand that, that's not good enough.
Mhm.
Once we start to feel that what we are is not being harmed, right away, that will ratchet down the pain because we're not identifying, we're not losing ourselves in the pain. That will give us some semblance of control, initial control. Now, the next level that we can do, and again, the meditation is immensely powerful on how to transcend pain. Because, like I said, I had no choice. I better figure something out because this is crazy. Okay, so one is recognizing that we're untouched, and the awareness is just recognizing mind body sensations or bodily sensations, just aware of it. That's all. Okay. When pain kicks in, the real key from my direct experience and my perspective and what I've taught lots of people that are in pain, imagine that you almost fall back further. I know this sounds weird, but just go with me. Imagine you fall back further and deeper into the body, almost like you're retracting yourself. Now, what that'll do is that will give you non-identification or a level of detachment from the pain sensation. And as you start to retreat further and further back, you realize you're just the awareness of it. Once you've done that, imagine that you're hollow like a balloon.
Mhm.
No blood, no bones, no organs, no tissues, no nerves. Hollow. Imagine deeply what it would feel like to be completely and utterly hollow. Now, as you start to create that reality for yourself about being hollow, because imagination creates everything, it's very difficult to be overcome with pain if you're hollow.
Mhm.
Everyone that I've ever had do this says 75% reduction immediately. And some people have learned how to master it. So, in other words, when pain kicks in, Brian, our
Mhm.
natural reaction is to brace ourselves. Okay, we have to relearn. We can't use the reactionary finite mind to overcome things. So when pain kicks in, relax. When pain kicks in, relax and go further back into your body
Mhm.
and then start to imagine that you're completely hollow. And anyone who's in pain, and I've been there, watch what starts to happen to the pain threshold and watch what happens to your ability to command and lessen pain at will.
What is your suggestion for people that are on pain medications and many of them become highly addictive? And so in my own opinion, many of those pain medications restrict our ability to properly heal ourselves. They cloud the mind to a point that it's harder to get into that awareness to properly heal. That's just an opinion. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'd love to get your opinion about You know, it's so common now. So many people are living day to day, taking that pain medication. There, you know, how do we address that?
Okay. Well, I'm certainly not a doctor, and I'm certainly not giving medical advice. And if I
Right.
was a doctor, I never would have been able to heal myself. Okay. So, so when we take pain medications, antibiotics, okay, they are lowering our frequency and they are deadening our sensitivities,
Mhm.
which is just what you said. So that's from the metaphysical perspective. You're absolutely right. You can't heal yourself when you're taking those things. That you can't, because you're lowering your frequency. You have to raise your frequency to allow the disharmony to leave itself, because disharmony, low frequency disharmony cannot exist in a high frequency environment. And if you're not drugging yourself, you're going to go back to a higher frequency, and the disharmony won't be able to coexist within that environment. And that environment is your subtle body of energy and your physical body. So some people, well, let me go back to our reality is created based upon what we believe to be real and true. If someone truly believes that they have to take the pain medication in order to function, then that will be real and true for them. If someone truly believes and feels that they don't have to take them, that they know that they can get off them, that they know that they can transcend them, then that too will be real and true for them.
Mhm. And as we can tell from this conversation for this last hour, this is something that we could talk about forever. I mean, there's so many little variables and elements to healing. And a lot of times I hear just such a surface level discussion of healing when people are talking about healing. And it's rich with canyons and mountains and contradictions and paradoxes. There's so much to it. And just good that we have someone like you that is working on this. So people need to read your books and go to your seminar. I recommend going to your seminar on the 26th to the 28th of July. I will have the all of the information in the description. And you also have right after that a class coming up for Access Super Consciousness, right? For
Well,
your new book.
the class will be on healing. So we're going to have the
Okay.
workshop, and I realize some people can't travel or it doesn't work with their schedule.
Hmm.
But shortly, probably about 2 weeks, give or take a couple of days, about right around the middle of August, we're going to do the live Supercharged Self Healing online course. So those that can't make it, take the course, or take both of them. The compound effect increases the healing by an order of magnitude. So right after the workshop, we're going to be doing it online as well, the Supercharged Self Healing online course. And as you were just saying, Brian, we go deeper, dare I say, deeper than anybody. I feel that my metaphysical understandings of these things is kind of hopefully setting the bar for humanity for the next several hundred years. And by availing ourselves of these understandings and then doing them as guided by me, it changes everything. People's lives are completely and utterly changed mentally, emotionally, physically, in every single way form, because they didn't think it was possible till they hear the truth, and they start working with themselves with a complete. When you have a completely different understanding and you do completely different things, you get completely different results.
Hmm.
And that's kind of what we're doing. The Ascend the Frequencies healing technique and the teachings of RJ are going to move humanity forward specifically for the next 300 years. And these are the teachings that we're going to use to overcome, to use self-healing, self-mastery, manifestation, and to create the life that you truly desire. I don't want people to think that they have to suffer in order to evolve. You don't. It's one way to evolve. It's not the way to evolve. And I'm interested in showing another way to evolve, which is what we'll be talking about at the workshop.
Just curious, using your understandings, when we reach the 100% level of the RJ teaching, can we live for 500 years when we've truly touched into this in our current human form? Or is there we would just move on to a better body that works better? I mean, are we going to see people living for 200-300 years when they have a full awareness of how to properly heal themselves?
Yes, when we're in a higher frequency.
Okay.
So when we are in a higher frequency, now some of the stories, and I just taught a course on the Bible, some of those stories about people living to be 500, 700, 900. It's kind of funny. Everyone dismisses those as complete nonsense. Those stories are true.
Yeah.
Those stories are true. And then a whole bunch of the stories that people think are true are completely
A
made up.
complete.
So
So
it's
my
just kind
other,
of,
oh
yeah.
yeah, I need to check that out. You'd love to hear your teachings on the Bible. My the other curiosity is, people report with Joe Dispenza's seminars, light beings show up that help to heal them. You know, when you have a group of people in a higher frequency, you know, they report literally seeing
Mhm.
light beings showing up that they feel like they're able to access and go into those environments and help um be catalysts for healing and really push people forward into greater levels of healing. Have you had experiences like this in your events or seminars?
Yes. Yeah. And I'll even point out who was showing up during the workshop.
Yeah.
But what we're one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to do a group healing. We're all going to have the same intention. Now, when there's a large group of people, all with the same intention, there's an amplification of the energy, and it leads to incredible and greater efficacy of the intention itself because it's been amplified, because there's 50 people, 70 people, whatever it is.
Hmm.
There's this great amplification, and we're going to be doing group healings led by me during the workshop. People are going to come away with the tangible knowingness of literally how to channel higher frequency energy into their body, and actually they will feel themselves healing themselves as they do it. And I'm also going to show everyone how to do a very similar process and then direct that energy to everyone else in the room, or to your sick sister, or to your grandchild who's ill, or to the planet. It doesn't really matter. So those are some of the things that we're going to do that you can't do anywhere else but in person. There is an amplification when there is harmonized intention that leads to greater efficacy of whatever it is that we're trying to do. Now, when you do this with healing and it's done properly and it's guided properly, miracles literally occur.
Exciting. So everybody check that out. Check out my description. It's always a joy to talk to you, RJ. Thank you for coming on. We're going to talk to RJ again next month, right before his book comes out. So I'll be looking forward to talking to you about that. And we're going to talk about super consciousness and a bunch of really cool things from your new book. So everybody check my link below. And if you're struggling right now, know that there's hope, that this is not helpless. I don't care what your doctor says. I don't care what anybody says. And don't open up the internet and start looking to see what it says, because it doesn't know anything. That there is hope and you can heal yourself. So thanks again and welcome again to the Reality Revolution.